This video is brought to you by Private Internet Access. College is a scam. Yeah, it's a phrase we're hearing a lot these days. Now, for some, degrees aren't a good return on investment. For others, colleges are factories mass-producing woke sheeple. And for some folks, it's both. Now, we often hear that college degrees are useless, with students learning subjects that are equivalent
to major in basket weaving,
rather than marketable skills to help them succeed in a competitive economy. But is this an accurate representation of what education is, or of what it should be? Or as scholar Paulo Freire argues, are these common views of education dependent on what he calls the banking model, where learning becomes little more than a transaction? Well, let's try to just figure it all out today by asking the question, what is education for? Okay guys, before I keep going, I want to give a shout out to this video sponsor, Private Internet Access, a VPN that can help you as you scroll around the internet doing all sorts of good, fun, and weird stuff. Now, why would you need a VPN? Well, as you're doing stuff on your phone, your computer, your tablet, you are transmitting a bunch of information that often is unprotected, meaning bad people can get it and do bad things with it. But a virtual private network, or VPN, hides your IP address and safeguards your connection, keeping your data safe. And this way, your digital life is protected from those who would want to exploit your information for their own interests. Now, one of my personal favorite things about VPNs, besides the safety and security, is that a lot of things that I might want to read or watch or listen to are protected on the basis of where I am in the world and where that content is. But using private internet access, I can access some of my favorite shows from the UK and Europe without them knowing that I'm just some guy in America. And your private internet access plan will let you cover an unlimited amount of devices at the same time. So you can protect your entire household with one subscription. And if you need more proof about why they are the world's most transparent VPN provider, well, ask the 30 million people who have downloaded private internet access. So if you have been waiting to try a VPN, and if you haven't tried one yet, what are you waiting for? Try private internet access today. If you click the link in our description, you'll get 83% off your subscription. I didn't misspeak there, 83%. That works out to $2.03 a month. And you'll also get 4 months for free. So click the link in the description to make your data way more safe today. And now let's get back to the show. Now, for most of my lifetime, a college degree has been seen as a sort of one-way ticket to the American middle class or better. But recently, it seems like we're all asking if this is actually the case. According to a 2023 Wall Street Journal NORC poll, 56% of Americans agree that a 4-year degree is not worth the cost because people often graduate without specific job skills and with a large amount of debt to pay off. Imagine that. The Wall Street Journal also spoke to multiple college graduates who believe that they will be unable to pay back their student loans and that they will not see a return on investment. I've said this on here before, but I just have an insane amount of student loan debt that I'll probably never pay back. The number keeps getting bigger even as I'm paying. If you want to share your student loan debt number in the comments, feel free. You show me yours and I'll show you mine. Meanwhile, conservative politicians are increasingly decrying universities for what they perceive as woke indoctrination and professors' ideological agendas. Take the New College of Florida. Now, when I was going to high school in the Sunshine State, this is where you went if you wanted to go to a state school that would let your freak flag fly. But recently, Governor Meatball Ron DeSantis has been cracking down and adding right-wing activists like Christopher Rufo to the board. Also, if you're gonna be like, Meatball Ron, Trump says that, you're supporting Trump. No, but he said a funny thing. Sometimes he says funny stuff. If you can't accept that, I don't know what to tell you.
I did everything right and they indicted me.
According to an op-ed by 2 professors at New College, what the DeSantis administration is trying to do, in brief, is force a conservative Christian model of education onto our public college, attempting to choke out hard-won academic freedom. And DeSantis has created new rules about what can be taught at state universities that have led some professors to stop teaching courses dealing with questions of race and gender, and some to lose or leave their positions. DeSantis ties the themes of economic viability and ideological control together in a recent speech announcing his ban on college diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI departments.
If you look at the way
This has actually been implemented across the country. DEI is better viewed as standing for discrimination, exclusion, and indoctrination, and that has no place in our public institutions.
In reference to the field of gender studies, DeSantis asked,
How employable are you with some of these majors?
And declared,
we want to focus on the classical mission of what a university is supposed to be.
Now, we've talked about this before, but in recent years, universities, or at least their board members and administrators, seem to think that the mission of college is largely just job training. Marymount University in Virginia has announced its plans to cut majors in English, philosophy, history, and sociology, aka the subjects that we use in basically every Wisecrack video. Now, according to journalist Nick Anderson, this move shows the continuing vulnerability of humanities in higher education at a time when pressure is high to deliver degrees that many students and families perceive as more valuable in the job market. In case you're wondering, I care a lot about this because I was a humanities professor for a lot of years. I taught philosophy at universities, and I got out before it got real crazy, but it makes you sad to look back at a field that you loved and see what's happening to it. So solidarity to all my fellow current, past, and present humanities professors out there. I'd give you something if we could, but we have nothing to give. Now, it's not shocking that Americans, and increasingly folks around the world, have a dollars and cents attitude towards the educational system. Yeah, it's not just an American thing. When I taught in England, we had to teach people how to write resumes in a class on Kant's Third Critique. It was crazy, and one of the reasons I left, along with crippling depression. But what if this cash rules everything around me attitude is also affecting the way that we view educational practice and learning itself? Okay, so to take Meatball Ron at his word, what is the classical mission of education? Well, it doesn't get that much more classical than Aristotle. And for him, the aim of education is to cultivate character. Because education is directly connected to politics, those with a cultivated character will also become virtuous and well-informed citizens. This was basically his pitch for creating a functional democracy. Because seriously, imagine a world where the only education that matters is like STEM subjects that get you jobs, and then you have to vote in elections, and you know nothing about politics, history, philosophy, religion, all these things that matter so much and what it means to be a political human, and you're just like,
I don't know. I have computer money.
Now, for Aristotle, education prepares students to be good citizens who think freely, rather than being overly influenced by their passions or the opinions of others. It also entails being aware of a variety of positions, even those you might not naturally be inclined to agree with. In America, it's common to think of education as a means to an end, not an end in itself, meaning that the point of an education isn't to be educated, it's to use that education to make money. This is because our society likes to tell us that self-actualization and happiness don't come from character or virtue, but from career success and earning potential. And to be fair to those who think education is primarily a path to wealth, earning a college degree does offer some advantages. According to journalist Jessica Dickler, bachelor's degree holders generally earn 75% more than those with just a high school diploma. So it makes sense for American students, parents, universities, and even politicians to prioritize job training and earning potential when considering the value of a college education. But of course, this clashes with the classic Aristotelian model in which education is a preparation for life and not just a necessary evil on your way to the C-suite. Now, somewhat ironically, considering recent debates, many of the banned subjects, basically anything to do with race, gender, or critical theory, are consistent with the intellectual and social goals of classical education. Because when students understand things like racism, patriarchy, sexuality, and ideology critique more generally, they can better evaluate whether or not society is actively furthering the common good, and think critically about inequality and injustice. But of course, at this point, some want to have their classical education cake without actually having any idea what a classical education consists of. For example, while it critiques humanities and social science professors for perpetuating an agenda, the Florida government is busy promoting their own ideological agenda. And real quick, if any Floridians think I'm unfairly picking on your state, I'm speaking from lived experience. I lived there for a while. I went to school in Florida. This is a product of the Florida public education system. So, think before you get defensive, okay? I'm critiquing from a place of confused love. Also, your state looks like a wiener. For example, state-provided education materials include slides that said it was a misconception that the founding fathers wanted strict separation of church and state, and that they in fact wanted religion to be promoted. The same slides mention that the founding fathers were against slavery, even though they owned slaves. But I guess they were against it.
Ate opponent's brains and invented cocaine. He's coming.
These folks are worried about authoritarianism in education, in which teachers affected with the woke mind virus indoctrinate students with dangerous ideas, like some people are gay, or enslaved people built much of this country, or Judy Blume wrote some cool books. Also, if you haven't watched it, there's a Judy Blume documentary out right now. Watched it the other night. Amazing. A huge Judy Blume head now. And here, they're at least kind of correct, in so much as the American education system really is set up to indoctrinate students, just not in the way that they think. And right-wing worries that left-wing opinions can be instilled by force as if downloaded through a brain implant indicates a misunderstanding of how learning works in the first place. This understanding of education in which teachers just sort of like drop facts and information into a student's brain box as if they're being deposited into a bank is what Brazilian philosopher and educator Paulo Freire called the banking model of education. In this model, students are seen as piggy banks, and teachers are kids with pockets full of nickels. According to Freire, when teachers are thought of as bank clerks, he also calls them domesticators and prescribers, there is no real sense of teacher-student partnership. Rather than a hierarchical relationship between educator and student, he thinks education should operate with a more Socratic model, in which teacher and student operate on a similar level, and in which teachers are open to learning from their students. This is why, according to Freire, relying on a banking model is bad pedagogy, as teaching to the test fails to produce deep understanding. But seriously though, there are some tests that I studied for in high school and college that operated this way, and if my life depended on it, I could not tell you what trigonometry is. Gun to my head. Couldn't tell you what it is. The scholar Brian Wish describes it. According to Freire, the banking model is not just oppressive, it is also ineffective. It decontextualizes knowledge, leading students to merely memorize the material by rote, rather than understanding it conceptually. This discourages critical thinking and conditions people to accept authority without question. Under this model, students learn to passively accept what they're taught, as when there isn't space for discussion and dialogue, there isn't space for questions and critique. And that's why it's so concerning that some states flirt with ideas like not teaching political theories like socialism or communism, or dedicate time to teaching about why any ideological alternatives to capitalism are bad. To be clear, I'm not saying that we should teach people that capitalism is bad and you should all be Trotskyists. I'm simply saying both. We gotta learn them all, and we gotta think for ourselves. Is that bad? Is that bad? Tell me if it's bad. And this is why Freire challenges the notion that knowledge is a gift bestowed by those who consider themselves knowledgeable upon those whom they consider to know nothing. He writes, knowledge emerges only through invention and reinvention, through the restless, impatient, continuing, hopeful inquiry human beings pursue in the world, and with each other. He's describing learning as an active and engaged process of discovery, questioning and re-question. A process which doesn't create tiny humans who are packed with information, like USB storage drives that love cartoons and sometimes wet the bed, but rather creates curious little thinkers who also sometimes wet the bed. Also, if you made it this far in the video and you're thinking, is Burns a little more jacked up than usual? I've been drinking this can of coffee I got, and it turns out that I shouldn't drink cold brew because I feel right now like I'm on the types of drugs that I've never taken. But it has to be something like this. This model of education has a political edge for Freire. And if that sounds scary, remember that even Aristotle thought education and politics were inherently linked. To Freire, education is a liberatory process, which means that it must create the space for questioning authority. For him, authentic liberation, the process of humanization, is not another deposit to be made in man. And no oppressive order could permit the oppressed to begin to question why. And this is what courses on things like race and gender or even history taught accurately do. They create the space to think through various modes of oppression in our society. And to quickly say something positive about Florida education, when I was in middle school, I participated in a statewide African American history curriculum and contest. And the experience was really, really transformative for me. It challenged me, it made me think differently about myself, my place in society, and the place of people like me in society, and it was really important. So thanks for that, Florida. Now, anthropologist and professor David Graeber once said that he prefers self-subverting authority.
I think there are certain types of authority which undermine their own basis. If you're a teacher and you teach someone very well, they know what you used to know, so there's no further basis for your authority.
In other words, great educators should be creating the conditions for their own obsolescence. They should teach students what they know, encourage them to think critically, and push them to go even further. Remember, guys, even the greatest teacher of his day taught people that the sun revolved around the earth.
And he disproved that theory, making Aristotle and everybody else on Earth look like a bitch.
This is why Freire doesn't think education should be a process in which information is deposited, tests are taken, diplomas are obtained, and jobs are acquired. Rather, education should prepare us for life and make us fully human. Asking questions about societal structures, social conditions, and political realities furthers that end, as does asking big questions about art, religion, and science. And this is why Freire thought education was a two-way street, as educators need to be challenged by the material experiences of their students, learning from their insights and being pushed to think more deeply. For Aristotle, Freire, and lots of folks in between, education isn't about getting us a job. And our jobs aren't fundamental in shaping our identities. The purpose of learning and teaching is to create a dialogue between student and teacher that fosters curiosity, empathy, critical thinking, and creativity. Now, before we wrap up, I read some comments on a recent video where some of you said you feel like we're breaking down some intense and kind of dark topics and not leaving you with anything constructive or positive. While we don't have a magical fix for this one, I can really recommend that you read Freire's Pedagogy of the Oppressed. It's a really, really great work written by someone who was actively engaged in the process of teaching those on the margins of society. And even though it's an intense book, it has a really hopeful tone to it. And as much as possible, we encourage everyone to support all of those people who work in education, as in this country, no one is doing something so important while getting paid so little. So to the college professors having their curriculums curtailed, to people at the elementary, middle, high school, preschool level that are dealing with book bans and angry parents and all this sort of stuff, we're with you for what it's worth. And if there is a teacher in your life, maybe take them out for a coffee or a drink or go see a movie. Get them a massage. If you're rich, get that teacher and blindfold them. Make them think that you're kidnapping them, but you're not kidnapping them. You're taking them on an around the world trip. But for the first couple hours, use a voice changer thing and be like, time to die, motherfucker. So they're freaking out. So by the time you get to the airport and they know they're going in a private jet, they think they're dead. And now they're jet setting around the world with you, eating guacamole at 30,000 feet. Who wouldn't love that? In the meantime, let us know what you think about the role of education in society. Is knowledge just a weird sort of banking system? Should degrees equal higher salaries? Or is learning a lifelong process of becoming a human? Let us know what you think in the comments. Thank you so much to all of our patrons for your support. Seriously, it means a lot. It helps us. If you want to join our Patreon page, which would help, there's a link in the description. You get perks like videos early with no ads, access to our Discord server. At one level, you get office hours from a washed up philosophy professor who will answer your questions in a way that hopefully isn't trying to ideologically brainwash you. But thanks to all of you for coming here, for creating the space for us to dig into topics like this and ask big questions. Thank you in advance for all the fun comments we're gonna get. I mean that genuinely, by the way. I know I sound sarcastic sometimes when I'm not. Do something good for a teacher, and I'll see you later. Although I should stop saying don't put that in the video, because now every time I say that, they do it, especially if it's Jackson.
It tempts them so much.
It does.
Especially Jackson.